glad you could join us on The Road Less Traveled. This is a series we've just started to be able to talk to people who've had this entrepreneurial journey by following an interesting path of their own. And who better than you to really be a part of this conversation? I'm also especially excited because you're a Cottonian. And you know how we Cottonians are. It's a bonding factor. So I feel in a way, though this is the first time I'm speaking with you, we know each other because of the Cottonian factor. So thank you so much.
That's lovely. Great. Which house did you belong to?
Barton.
Oh, I'm Foley. That's why I'm wearing blue.
Good. Kiran, I want to start off, and I was trying to do a little bit of research, and I have some exciting questions, I think, later for you. But I read very early on, you had an interesting path that your father encouraged you to follow, right? It was unconventional, to be a brewmaster.
Yeah.
Do you think that was the beginning of your path to being an entrepreneur or your entrepreneurial path?
I think first and foremost, Sandhya, right from when I was in school, I had a very kind of an experimental orientation, in the sense I wanted to try new things. I think all of us in my class were very experimental in our approach to life. So we were not shy or fearful of doing something different. And that, I think, I really owe it to my teacher, the late Anne Warrior. She was my school teacher, and she really inculcated this sort of sense of experimentation, of not fearing the unknown, of really asking these kind of questions, saying, what can I do with this? So I think that kind of set me into a very unconventional path, saying, I don't want to do what everyone else is doing. Let me do something different. Let me be daring. Let me try out something which others haven't. So I think that kind of, first and foremost, I must say that I must also confess that I did try to get into medicine, which was really a very obvious road for someone like me who had an interest in biological sciences. So that was not unconventional. But when I didn't make it to medical college, that's when I basically started veering towards another path. It was disappointment, it was failure that made me realize that I had to then do something very different. And that's when my late father said to me, why don't you try and pursue brewing? And I thought that was a crazy suggestion, but it was so unconventional. And my late father told me, he said, if you really want to do something daring, that's what you should be doing. And that's what made me go off to Australia and study brewing. And of course, I was all set to pursue a brewing career in India. But even there, I was shown the door. And, that is what then accidentally led me into my entrepreneurial path. So I always tell people it was because of a gender bias that the brewing industry had and wouldn't give me a job that saw me take on an opportunity to start my own business.
And sometimes there's always an upside to some of these things.
Yeah, and I want entrepreneurs and young people to know that it's disappointments and failures and these kind of challenging times that actually shows you new opportunities. So I really want to tell young people that don't start getting disillusioned and disheartened because of COVID-19, because this can also show you very interesting opportunities you had never thought of.
Absolutely. Kiran, but I still want to stay with your early days. I'm still with young Kiran, who, because of a certain gender bias, couldn't become a brewmaster and turned her attention to a path that led you to where you are today. What were the risks, Kiran? I mean, in hindsight, some of it is lessened, but there must have been huge risks and challenges.
I think there were huge unknown risks. I mean, I didn't even think about...
See it as a risk.
Yeah, so I didn't even think of it as a risk. I just feel that when you take up a challenge, when you start saying, I'm going to go down this path, actually you are quite oblivious to the risks, and I think you just get onto that path and then you keep solving those problems and challenges as you go along. And that's what I've done in my life. I mean, every step of the way in my entrepreneurial journey, I've kind of looked at challenges or risks or whatever you call them, and then learned to assess, manage, and mitigate them. So I think that's been my story of building my company. And I think that's most entrepreneur story. It is never smooth sailing. It's never something that is easy and, you know, without any obstacles. I mean, come on, people, I think, will fool themselves if they think that everything is handed over on a platter. It doesn't happen that way. I think problem solving, working out your own solutions, this is what is the sign of good entrepreneurs and good leadership. I mean, and I think I pride myself in one thing, and that is I am a big risk taker, you know, and I have taken mega risks. I have basically stuck to my beliefs and my path, and I haven't listened to the skeptics or to the naysayers or to the ones who keep sort of challenging me and taunting me and telling me that I'm on the wrong path. If I believe I'm on the right path, then I stick with it. But I'm also not the kind of person who believes that once I get onto a path, it's the right path. I also look at that path, and when I suddenly start seeing things which I had not anticipated, I do take calls which then get me off that path, you know. So it's not that I'm always right, but I think over the years, I feel that my risk assessment experience is puts me into a place where I know which are the really difficult risks and which I should get out of, and which I should pursue. And in fact, right now, it's a very interesting path that I have pursued, which nobody believes in, which is the path of high-end innovation. And you know, there's so much skepticism about India not being able to go down that path in drug discovery and drug development, that I want to prove that I can do it. Because I started Biocon on the belief that we had a very strong scientific intellectual capital which I must leverage. That was the fundamental belief on which I was so excited about starting Biocon. And it was my sort of raison d'etre of saying, I want to make this a science-led business. I want to prove to our compatriots in India in the business world that science is a very exciting, opportune area for India, because I think so much can come out of science and engineering. And I think this is true for the country today. I think COVID itself has unleashed so many of these opportunities in science and engineering and IT and data science and you name it, you know.
Yeah,
today we are all talking about artificial intelligence and robotics and data science and of course biotech and what have you. So I'm very glad that we've come to this point where India recognizes its strength in science and innovation. And this is a strength we've had for centuries, but we never really leveraged it. And in recent times, we even lost belief and faith that we had those capabilities. So, you know, I really want to work towards building this credibility in science-led businesses.
Kiran, and that's amazing. For me, what stood out was your risk-taking ability and also being agile, right? To recognize when things aren't necessarily going right and turning to a different path. But, for our listeners, can you share an anecdote of an instance when things went horribly wrong and what it took to actually overcome that?
So there are many, many instances, but let me start right in my early days, because that's the most difficult time, that when you take a decision, a very risky decision, and things go horribly wrong, how do you cope with it, right?
Absolutely.
So the first big setback I had was we had developed a homegrown enzyme technology, okay? And we needed to scale it up. And of course, I needed capital. And we were so excited with this enzyme technology. And I thought, I'll get funding for this. And those days, there was no venture funding. It was all debt financing.
Which year are we talking about, Kiran?
It was in the late 80s. It was about 88, 89. So, in the earlier part of the 80s, we had developed this technology. I had from 83 to 89, so about 5 years, 88. I had put together a very, very energized and very capable and innovative group of young scientists. And all of us together had developed this very interesting solid state fermentation technology for enzymes. And we were so confident that it will work, and we needed people to finance it. And of course, nobody would touch it because they would say, no, it's too risky. It's not a proven technology. Why don't you just be like other companies and go and license one technology from overseas which works? Why do you want to take such risk? Supposing it doesn't work when you scale up. I said, well, that's the business. That's the business risk we have to take, because that's what will set us apart. That is our proprietary IP that we are creating. But they couldn't understand all this. So nobody would touch this technology, and I was finding it very frustrating. For 1 year, I went around trying to get people to buy into this story. And then, of course, it was an accidental encounter with Mr. Vagul, chairman of ICICI at that time. And I was telling him how difficult it was for me to raise capital. And he, of course, said, oh, you know something? He said, I've just started a venture fund. Why don't I help you with this technology? And of course, he was the one that said, I'm not going to give you a loan. I'm going to take an equity in your company. And that was like music to my ears. Saying, oh, I mean, I don't owe you any money. He said, no. So that was my first venture fund that invested in me. And he then realized that I was asking for too little. So he actually revised my proposal and said, I need to give you a little more, and you need to give me a little more equity. So I gladly accepted it, and they invested in the technology. And I must tell you that it's not that the technology worked as soon as we scaled it up and switched on the key. Far from that. In fact, for the first 3 months or 6 months, I remember, the technology needed a lot of tweaking, because when you scale up, everything doesn't scale up that easily. You made mistakes, right? And especially in the biotech field, you make a lot of mistakes, like heat transmission, calculations that have gone wrong, or aeration speeds that you might have missed out on, things like that, simple engineering things that went wrong. And at that, it also coincided with the time that I had hired very recently a biochemical engineer from MIT. So he was kind of thrown into the deep end saying, okay, you've joined the company, now fix this problem. And so it took us almost 6 months to fix it. But the point is, we knew the technology inside out. So we were not worried about failing.
Yeah.
Okay? We knew we could fix it. And we knew we needed time, but we could fix it. And I remember the people who didn't lend us money said, oh, thank God we didn't invest in this technology. See, it has failed, it has failed. That's the way they taunted me. But Mr. Vagul said, look, I know you'll fix it. Don't worry, we are with you. Anyway, we've invested in you and it will work. And sure enough, 6 months later, it worked, and it was such a success for us. And in fact, it just so happened that a year later, Unilever acquired our Irish partners. And they found that the most valuable thing that they had invested in globally was this Indian technology. And they quickly bought out ICICI's venture arm, because they said, no, we need more stake in this company. Wow. And so ICICI did very well out of it. Within less than a year, they had got 4 times what they had invested. So you see, what I'm saying is, if you believe in something, and you stick with it, despite everyone telling you what you're doing is wrong, and oh, you failed, and oh, it's not working. If you believe in your technology, and if you believe, because see, science is something you have to believe in.
Yeah.
People who don't understand science and who are looking at it from the outside don't understand why you're doing it, right? So I think that's what life has taught me, that if you have a scientific belief in what you're doing, at least in my kind of business, then don't get misled by the naysayers. And that's exactly what's happening to me today, where I have this amazing, I believe, breakthrough drug called itolizumab. which I started trialing for COVID patients. It started working very well. But I had a huge negative, sort of barrage from all the people within the country telling me that, this is not a drug that I should be really talking about. They don't think it's such a great drug. All this kind of rubbish went on. Okay. Now today there is the news that has come out, and I realized a few years ago, I said, I have an amazing drug, but India is not the country to appreciate the importance or the breakthrough potential of this drug. So a few years ago, I actually licensed this drug to a US company. Because I knew that, ultimately we have a colonial mindset. If somebody blesses it from the outside, we will accept it. But if we are trying to develop it on our own, everyone doesn't believe that there's any credibility.
The ghar ki murgi dal barabar syndrome.
To put it very plainly, but it's a very sad reflection on the way we think in India.
Absolutely.
Because, when we talk about self-reliance, it starts with self-belief.
Yeah.
Right? I keep saying Atma Nirbhar is fine, but we have to have Atma Vishwas first.
Absolutely.
And that to me is the biggest failing in our country in terms of innovation. If we don't believe in our own innovation, how are we going to, get into non-linear growth, right? And that is why even in our kind of business, even though we brag and boast about being the world's largest vaccine producer, the world's largest producer of generic drugs, look at our share of the global value chain in pharmaceuticals. It's only 3%. Because we have not focused on innovation. We have not captured a higher part of that value chain, which we should. That's my purpose. And that's what I'm working towards, saying that I want to develop a pipeline of very innovative drugs that can actually get us into that mind share of the global value chain and the share of the global value that is being created in our sector. So today, for the first time, our US partners actually released very, very important data on a trial that they were doing with this drug on what they call graft versus host disease. And it's the same mechanism of action that we have used in COVID-19 in India. And they also have announced that they are also going to start a COVID-19 global trial. So it shows that this drug is an important drug. I've always believed in this drug. I've always invested in this drug. I've always, done whatever I could to make people understand the importance of this drug. But doctors in India refuse to acknowledge that drug. And that's what forced me to license it to the US. I hope that this drug, and I hope it will become an important drug in the years to come. And then at least I hope doctors in our country will realize that there is what is called as important Indian innovation that they must buy into. Because they blindly accept anything from the West. Any drug coming from the West, whether it's good or bad, is accepted by our medical professionals. But anything that's homegrown is looked at with a lot of suspicion. I'm sorry to say.
No, it's the truth. But the two powerful things I take away from what you just said, Kiran, is to have a purpose and the conviction in that purpose, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's what I've always believed in. And I'm not saying that I've never made mistakes. I've made many mistakes. But I've learned from those mistakes. I know those mistakes I've made. For instance, I invested in a German company many years ago, thinking that I'll start my European footprint through this company. And then I realized that this was not the right formula, and that this was not the kind of German company who would help me to create that footprint in Europe. And I exited from that company. I sold it back to the founders of that company for literally $1. I said, no, I think I made a mistake. I don't think you will be able to help me in creating that footprint in Europe. So I think it's better you get back to your original business and get on with it, because this is not going to help me. So I have made such judgment calls which have been mistakes. Okay. Yes, many times I've made some of those kind of judgment calls, but I would say I've been right more times than being wrong.
I think it goes back to having your purpose and being convinced about it. I think there's such a strong connect there and sticking the path that it's worked for you. Um, Kiran, my next question is, because we hear a lot about entrepreneur journeys, and do you have friends on along this journey, Kiran, or is it a lonely journey, or doesn't it matter?
See,
Mentors, friends.
no, I've always had I've been always mutually inspired, let's put it this way, by my colleagues. Okay. I have very smart colleagues. Of course, my family is a great support factor for me. My husband has been a great anchor for me as I've built my business. And I think, I am a very open, networked person. So I've always shared my trials, tribulations, and successes with my colleagues and friends. And that sort of helps me to de-stress, let's put it that way. So it's never been, according to me, a lonely journey. I've never felt that I'm the only one who has built this company. Far from that. I think without my colleagues, this is not a company I could have built. This company is such a complex company that without having smart colleagues who actually have done an amazing job along the way, I could have never built this company.
Absolutely. But you also spoke about family. And I want to touch on, you did have inspiring people around you, apart from your husband, of course. But when I did some research, I read about your mother.
Yeah.
Who's been an entrepreneur.
Yeah, my mother is an amazingly inspirational person. She is at 89 years of age. She's still a very, very active entrepreneur. She runs a dry cleaning and laundry service. And even today during COVID, she insists she has to go to her office.
That's amazing.
And I sort of, for the first 2 months, I totally held her prisoner. I said, no, you can't go. And after that, she begged and she said, no, I'll wear my mask and I'll put on a visor and I'll be very careful, don't worry. And she promised me that her assistant, wipes her computer clean with sanitizer, and her room is sanitized every day. And she's even put one board outside her little industrial estate about masking and sanitizing. So
you have inspiration right there. I mean, that
inspires me a lot. And of course, she's also very proud of what I'm doing. So I think family has played a very important role. Of course, I'm very close. We are very close-knit as a family. I have 2 brothers. And, their children are also very close to me. They're like my own kids because I don't have kids of my own. And my niece is someone I want to I've given her an opportunity to start one of our very young companies in Boston. And she herself is a very, very accomplished young person. She's a PhD in immuno-oncology. She's done her business graduation from Stanford Business School. And she's also worked in very large venture fund, capital companies in Boston. So she's very accomplished. So I told her, I said, I don't want to lose this asset to the outside world. Why don't you do something for Biocon? So that's how I got her.
Smart decision.
I got her to start this company, which is an immuno-oncology company. Again, doing a lot of innovative work. And a lot of the research is going on in Bangalore. But, we're trying to kind of get the Boston-Bangalore connect in a very innovative way.
Sounds good. I have one question left, Kiran, and then I'll jump into a rapid fire with you. My last question is, you've been talking a lot about compassionate capitalism, right? And I feel today, the one thing COVID has done for all of us is to really stop in our tracks and think, right? How do we want to do what we all do, but differently, perhaps in a more compassionate way? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, Kiran?
So, my view is that because of, my entrepreneurial journey about this sense of purpose has also involved this sense of capitalism. What should my business purpose be all about? And it has been about making a difference. It has been about giving back to society. It has been about the greater societal good. Because I'm in that kind of a business, right? My business is about treating patients. It's about solving global healthcare problems. And so I'm already,
By
connected,
definition,
whether I like it or not, to societal good. And when you're connected to societal good, you suddenly realize the huge plethora of inequities in our country when it comes to healthcare itself. I know that every day I get a request saying, oh, I'm in this hospital, I'm being prescribed your cancer drug. Can you give me free drug? I can't afford it. Can you give me free this, free that? I keep telling her, listen, I can't give you free stuff, but I can certainly help with, defraying some of your cost. Like supposing I can give you some discount and give you some, opportunities to pay in installments. I hope that will help. See, the problem in our country is that the governments don't do their bit. And then they expect the private sector to do their bit. And that's not fair. So I think there has to be some impact bonds that are created as a PPP model. There are lots of ways of delivering healthcare in an affordable way to people. So I'm really focusing now on that, saying how do we basically create a health economics understanding of why healthcare, investing in healthcare is so important, and how should a government invest in healthcare, and how should the private sector look at their business. I don't like this concept of profiteering from patients, because that's a very ugly phrase that is used.
Absolutely.
At the same time, you must understand that we cannot be doing our business for charity.
Absolutely.
Because we need to invest in the kind of research and innovation and all the kind of, capital intensive operations that we all have to pursue. Like you cannot be manufacturing products without a facility. And then you want a high-end facility. Then you need to be globally benchmarked. So all that is very expensive. I don't think people even realize how a biologic is made. They all look at a tablet and they think, oh, it must be very cheap to make. But they don't realize that, come and look at our facilities, how expensive they are, what kind of practices we have, what kind of sterile facilities we have. I don't think anyone realizes how expensive it is to run a pharmaceutical company and then to run a biologics company. See, making a tablet and making a vial are very, very different. When you make tablets, you don't need the kind of sterile facilities that you need for a vial, right?
Yeah.
The extent of sterility you need for a vial is huge. And all that costs money. And you have to have trained people. You have no idea what the regulatory barriers are for such products. So I think people don't get it. And at the end of the day, they say, why is it so expensive? I mean, I was really shocked that first and foremost, our drug itolizumab was considered to be a deshi, cheap version of the imported drug. And I said, oh my God, I'm so insulted because our drug is so different. And secondly, we are not a deshi version. We are an innovative drug. Please get that straight. And then it's not cheap. We made it cost competitive. Okay. But it's not. And then they say, why are you charging so much? I can buy this drug for 10 rupees. Why are you charging so many thousand? And I'm saying, guys, if you don't know what the difference between one tablet and a vial is, you shouldn't be making your comments. But, this is the ignorance of our society and the societal mindset we have, which is so negative. And I often say, in fact, I was at a conference, at a sort of a conclave a few days ago, and quite a few of us on that panel realized and all agreed that societal mindset has to change. For any progress to happen, there is a very negative societal mindset that has trapped us in this country. Because maybe we are frustrated, maybe we are disappointed, maybe we just don't have the equal opportunities, whatever it is. But there's so much negativity in our society, whether it is, angst against even companies trying to revive lakes, okay, and they have a problem in that. Or it is about building infrastructure, another group of activists will have a problem with that. Or it is about companies doing well, somebody else has an envious problem about that. So it's very sad. And I think a lot of that comes because there is far too many inequities in our society. And that's why I feel that my compassionate capitalism is about how do I bridge some of those inequities? At least I can try and do that in healthcare.
More power to you. Completely agree with you. I always say when I see trolls on Twitter, it's such a reflection of the negativity in our society that
Yeah.
if you can be faceless and nameless, your first choice is to be negative.
And most of the trolls don't have a identity.
Absolutely. And I would say if you don't have an identity, at least try and acquire a good one, right? But they don't. No, but thank you, Kiran. That was beautiful. I'm going to jump into some quick questions. An entrepreneur you admire who's been, other than your mom's been an inspiration, but another entrepreneur.
I think Devi Shetty, he's an entrepreneur I really admire, because the way he's built his whole health, his hospital chain with a sense of purpose, with this whole approach of affordable access and affordable healthcare. I really like the way he's built it. He inspires me a lot.
A mistake you've made as an entrepreneur, you'd advise up and coming entrepreneurs not to make, that you've learned from and say, hey, look out for this?
Well, for a long time, I've been super sensitive about criticism. And I think I've realized over time that you've got to stay true to what you're doing. There will be criticism. You must not, expect no criticism. You will have a lot of criticism. I face this all the time from analysts who report on my company. And for a long time, what has finally made me happy is those same analysts who criticize me and told me I wasn't a good leader, business leader, were the same guys who then a few years later said, wow, look at the spunk she has. Look at how she's built her business. The men should learn from her. This is a very, gender bias loaded statement. But I'm just saying, one thing that I've also learned is there is a gender bias. Okay. There is a very strong gender bias even today in our society. And I would say to every young woman entrepreneur, be tough, be bold, believe in yourself. Because unfortunately, it is still there, whether we like it or not. And it's not going away for a long time.
What's an overrated trait, Kiran? People say, oh, an entrepreneur should be this, that. And sometimes you say, that word is used loosely.
Well, in terms of entrepreneurs, they always talk about risk takers. And of course, they talk about being smart and, looking at opportunities ahead of others and being very agile and aggressive and, go-getting. Let's put it that way. I think all of those in various ways are true. You've got to be a risk taker. You've got to be aggressive. You've got to be ambitious. You've got to really have some idea of where you're going, that sense of purpose, some vision. So you need a bit of all of that. So I would say that, they normally look at entrepreneurs as highly resourceful. And I think we are very resourceful. So I really don't think there's an overrated thing. It depends on what you're really talking about each entrepreneur.
Sure.
So some people, the only kind of entrepreneur I don't really respect too much are the entrepreneurs who are really smart at creating financial models that are very smart.
Yeah.
Okay. And there are plenty of them. They know how to hedge their financial model.
VC friendly almost, right? They're VC friendly, the venture capital friendly.
So they know how to sell themselves.
Yeah.
But they are hollow inside. So I find that is a big problem with VCs. VCs are very easily influenced by good talk, smart talk. They don't go below that. And I think there are a lot of those, like over smart entrepreneurs who know how to get VC.
Talk the talk even if they don't walk the talk. I completely agree with you.
So that's the kind of the caution I would give to a lot of VCs, I would say, more than the entrepreneur themselves. Entrepreneurs have to do their job. They have to sell their business. They have to sell their idea. So I don't blame the entrepreneurs. But I think VCs make this mistake of getting very impressed by smart talking entrepreneurs. And then they miss out on the really good ones who have something really valuable to offer.
Almost links back to the inequities in life, right? It resonates there.
And that's why a lot of women find it difficult to get VC funding, because they're not smart enough to sell themselves or their ideas, in that way. So I think VCs normally kind of feel that, women are not very ambitious. Those are the words I've heard, that women entrepreneurs are not that ambitious, which I don't agree with.
Absolutely, don't agree with either. A lighter question, Kiran. Everybody on every social media platform has acquired a lockdown hobby. Have you had the time for a lockdown hobby, whether it's cooking or just watching Netflix?
I have always been fond of cooking, which I have actually tried my hand at again, and I've enjoyed it. I think I've now started watching movies which I never had watched for a long time. So that I'm now one addict of, sort of Amazon Prime and Netflix serials or movies or whatever you might call it.
Any good recommendations, Kiran? Anything you watched that's interesting that you liked?
I think there are lots of good films, to watch on Netflix. And, I watch anything and everything. Like I watched Shakuntala Devi the other day.
I watched it yesterday too.
And then I've been watching a serial called Madame Secretary, which is quite nice. And then The Spy, of course, was very good.
Yeah, The Spy was very good.
Yeah. So I've been watching a bunch of mixed things, like, of course, you must watch Contagion, which I hope you watched, because it's...
No, I haven't, but...
You must watch it.
I will.
It is a true depiction of what's happening today. It's almost eerily...
Really? I must watch that. My last question. Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, where will you be 5 years from now? Where do you want to be 5 years from now?
Well, I certainly want to be leading Biocon into a new league of companies which can boast of good innovation. Of course, I see myself as a company where all its divisions are doing very well, and being seeking leadership in what each one of our businesses is aspiring to do. And more than anything else, I really want to deliver on that dream of delivering on innovative science. That's where I really want to head. So I'm very excited about a lot of the scientific, journeys that I'm on. One of them is I've just started a startup company called Immunil with Siddharth Mukherjee of the famous oncologist from the US who wrote the book Emperor of All Maladies. And he and I have started a small company in India to offer these cutting edge CAR T therapies for cancer patients who otherwise just don't have a hope. So these are very exciting technologies, and I'm looking forward to delivering on those kind of technologies. I'm also looking forward to delivering on many of the scientific innovative programs that we have in-house. So lots to do. And really, I'm also helping with the government's own mission of delivering on science and innovation and startups in biotech. I just hope that in the future we see many more biotech companies the size of Biocon, because today I'm too alone in this space, because the rest of the companies are very small, apart from the vaccine companies, of course. The vaccine companies have at least been are of great scale, global scale. But there are many other smaller biotech companies who need to scale up, and I hope that they can.
Thank you for all the amazing work you're doing, Kiran. I think now more than ever, we need leaders like you. And thank you for this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.